Hello, this is Mike Walt from LM3. In this tutorial, I'm going to go over setting up a detector and getting the machine running. So this is the PAQi user interface. And the first thing I'm going to do before we get into the actual training process is I'm just going to snap an image. So I'm going to select a program code called Acquire Only, which just snaps a single image. I'm going to go over setting up hardware in another video, but right now I just have one camera set up and I'm running off of my development machine, so it's a little bit slower than usual. So what we're going to do today is set up inspection for these caps. This is an Old Spice cap, and we're going to train a classifier to classify the color. So I've got some caps that are discolored, missing color, and then on a subsequent video I'll get into object detection. So the first thing I want to do is get this camera set up so that I got a good view of the part. And so I'm going to go into train and I'm going to use the camera viewer. Go ahead and select my one camera in this case. And then I'm going to select this vent profile because it's a preset up. But I'll copy it to another one so there's a unique profile, camera profile. So this is a little bit too close to the part, so I'm just going to physically move the camera up a little bit. I want to get as much of the surface area of the cap as possible. And I want to try to not have glare. So let's try it like that. So you got a pretty good view of the top, the hole, and the side of it as well. So optimally you want to get rid of these shiny parts, considering we're trying to do color classification. The detectors will learn, but the more consistent your part is, the better. So I'm going to set up a profile, and I'm going to adjust the camera settings a little bit just to show you. If you go into properties, this will give you access to the camera settings. You can see I've already set this camera up to operate on a temperature color scheme, but I'm just using auto settings. If I go over to the far right, I've got tone mapping WDR enabled in auto mode as well. I've got the exposure auto settings off, so I can just really control the lighting. Really, it's exposure. It has the appearance of lighting change, but so I'm going to brighten it up a little bit like that. I'm going to apply. I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to create a new profile. So I'm going to call this cap. So we have our cap profile. You'll notice over here on the right, we have the ability to adjust the lighting settings. I'm going to leave it like this. So this is just setting up the camera. It's very easy to do. This is a live view. See, I can pull the cap out. So what my little nest looks like. So this program allows you to adjust the camera physically and adjust the settings in the camera as well. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to go back into train again, but this time I'm going to use the snap and train function to train a detector. So we're going to call this Old Spice cap. And we're going to make this as a classifier. We're not going to use an existing detector. Camera 1, and I'm going to use that cap profile to capture my images. So over here on the right we have several buttons that are used for the training process. To start, we just really want to snap images. So when we snap an image, what happens is the camera takes a picture. You can see down here we're keeping track of how many pictures we've taken. And on the first image, the program's going to bring up the labeling program so that you can specify how these parts should be labeled. So once the labeling program opens, you can use it to label your images. I'm not going to get into a lot of details on the labeling program. just enough to explain how you use it for this purpose of the first time training. So we're running a classifier, so you can just click right on the images and then label them to the class that you've loaded. So these are good parts. You notice that there's an expected reference and defect checkbox. You want to make sure that you check those properly, though the program will tell you if you have inconsistencies. So I label the first one, I save, I close the program. It goes back to the main screen where I can get more images. So for this purpose, I'm going to do a couple of images of each cap that I have here. And I'm going to do an evaluation, and I'm going to do a regular snap. Evaluation is going to mark the images to be stored in evaluation for evaluation later, after the detector is trained. So you want to get some evaluation images of your parts. You want to move your parts around a little bit as well as you're snapping them. The progress bar will show you when you've stopped. This is a 42 megapixel camera, so the images takes a little bit of time to take images, so you got to be patient if you're running that high resolution. So we'll do eval, snap, eval, snap. Give it a little bit of time to catch up. It's a queue, so you can press the buttons as fast as you want, but it's going to take however much time to store the images. That's good. I'm going to do this for a number of good parts, and then we'll switch over to bad parts. So I've snapped off 19 good images. You can see I've got the empty nest. At this point, I'm going to snap a few of those, but first what you want to do is switch your template. So you press the template button and hit snap, and it'll open up the labeling program again so that you can change the settings of the labels. I'm going to click on this image and we're going to label these bad. Notice on this one I'm going to call this a defect. So we're just labeling good for the good ones, bad for not good ones, basically. So I'll go ahead and save, close, and then I can snap off a number of bad images at this point. So I'll do one eval, one good. I can kind of rush along here because if I'm moving apart while I'm taking pictures, it doesn't really matter because these are considered bad. So take that one out. I'll snap. I'm going to exercise a little patience on this one to make sure we get some of these off-colored parts. If you rewind your video, you'll notice that these are more purple in nature. So there's a problem with the discoloration in the molding machine. Okay, so we're going to stop there. That's enough samples. Notice that once I got past 25 and the progress bar went green, this training button showed up. And this will allow me to upload the images to QC Hero, train a detector, and load the detector. So once we get through this process, there's nothing more to do. So the final step is just to verify all these images that you've taken. Make sure that the labels match and that the attributes are correct, though you can do that at the end. So I'm just going to scroll through these images one by one and make sure that they're labeled correctly. If you have any images that are labeled incorrectly or you just don't like the look of them, you can just delete the labels using this button and they won't get uploaded for training. So here's one in which I pulled the part out of the nest too quickly. So it's labeled good. I just change a label on it. So make sure you set it as a defect, and that fixes the label, the mislabeled part, which is really just a loading issue. So here's that one is one I'd want to get rid of. So just delete the label. It won't get used for training because it's going to confuse things. I think we're almost done. We're almost at the end here. Oh, there's another one, so I'm going to delete that one off. So it's good to be patient. Okay, so we're done verifying the labels. So all we need to do at this point is close. Close the program. And then it'll take you to a wizard in which you can enter your part number. So this is it'll also start the training process. So when this window pops up, since I'm training the first time, I'm just going to say training from scratch. If you're training a detector more, you would leave that unchecked. You can also adjust the speed. But for this video, we're just going to do things with max accuracy, the defaults. So, alright, so one of the other things that we need to do is reset the API key, because we're doing this for the first time. So in order to set the API key, go to QC Hero, your account, and go to the settings, API keys, expand, name your API key whatever you want. You can set an expiration date. I'm going to check all of the APIs, generate the key, copy the key, and then open Notepad, paste the key in place, and then save this file. So you want to make sure you save it as a UTF-16. So we're going to call this, actually already exists, API key ELM3 support. Save. I'm going to replace it. So if you're starting from scratch, you would just create a new one. So I can go back to the main page. At this point, I'm ready to finish off. Well, actually, the training has already started, so that you're done with the training process. That's going to run on its own. I'm going to go ahead and set up a part number. So I'm saying camera 1 enabled. Use the cap profile. Yes, we're going to do detection. We're going to use the old spice classified detector. And we're going to do add a new calibration. We're going to call this calibration old spice cal. This will be okay, I'm going to leave order disabled. I'm going to leave the default global threshold in place. And I'm going to remove the bad objects. So we don't want to accept bad objects. So we're going to remove this. For now, I'm going to leave the score for the good object at 75% certainty. And that's pretty much all we need to do for now. I'll get into more advanced settings, but what this does is say, when we're running in production, we expect one good part and no bad parts. And I'll demonstrate what that looks like. So I can save, close, And then at this point we have a part number in place with the calibration. So I want to save, then exit, and this will return me back to the wizard. So I have the Old Spice Classify detector being used and the calibration that we just created. So when I press next, it's going to go to the next page. We're almost done with the setup process at this point. So this is taking an image, doing a detection for step 1, camera 1, profile none, Old Spice Class, which actually I don't want none. I want to change this. I'm going to go back. But the configuration wizard, once we've started our detector, we want to go ahead and just enter a part number. So we're going to call this Old Spice Cap. We're going to run one step in this case. We're going to say camera 1 enabled using profile cap. Detection yes. Old Spice Cap. Classify. And then I'm going to add a new calibration. We'll call this Old Spice Cap Cal. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove the bad object from the expected objects. So just select remove, save. I'm going to leave all the rest of the defaults in place. I'm going to save this. And it's going to take me back to the wizard. Hit next. I have set up a single step inspection. Take an image, detect for step 1, camera 1, profile cap, Old Spice detector classify, and Old Spice cap calibration. Then I hit next. It'll save that and allow me to set some additional settings, which I'll go over later, but these are really the minimal settings. Display the image always and disable the rest of the functionality. So now I can close out of that. So now that I have started the training and have a part number set up, I can go ahead and select it. Just picking any one for the login. And at this point I can run the Old Spice cap. Now we'll notice that when you run this, it will just take a picture, not do any actual inspection. There's nothing on here. But as soon as the detector that we're training loads, which will happen automatically, you'll get a notification at the email that you entered, and then you can start inspecting. So my Old Spice detector has completed, and now I can run some tests. So running the Old Spice cap. Notice when I snap an image, it takes a picture, does the analysis. You'll also notice like the little red light goes on. That's an empty nest. The results are what we expect. We'll go ahead and put in a bad part. So we're scoring at 99.77% bad and 0% good, which is exactly what we expect. If I go ahead and put in a good one, we get a pass at a very high 99 point, I think that's 39% certainty. If I move the cap a little bit, doesn't matter. Still good part. So after training a detector and running in production, if you find that you want to train it more, because the more you train, the more accurate it's going to get. You can use the same training button to go into train from production. And this will present a list of potential part numbers and our loaded part numbers, as well as their associated detectors. So in this case, we got the Old Spice Classifier. Go ahead and hit OK. The program will go and retrieve any images from the database that scored low, marginally scored, and present them to you for verification, and it'll train the detector more. So the program itself will end up labeling the images as it stores them once the detector is in place. So all you really need to do is verify. So bad, good, bad, good, empty, which is bad. And you can choose to verify as many as you'd like. It could be 10, it could be 100, whatever you have time for. And when you finally go ahead and close the program, it'll go ahead and verify that the labels are match. So bad should be marked as a defect, good should be marked as expected, which is correct. And it'll go ahead and package those images that you verified for QC Hero and start training the data set, or training the detector. Again, nothing more to do. In this case, when the detector training is completed, the program will verify that the newly trained detector is better than the last and only install it in production if it is better. So that's continued training.